I understand. Great. As I understand it, the agenda, where is it? Okay. I think the first thing is on the agenda, let's do a roll call. I opened the meeting at 4:09, and then let's do the presentation. Cecilia, Cecilia, is
Cecily
that
Mendez.
Cecily. Yeah, I'm here.
okay? Cecily's presentation, and then we can approve the minutes. But let's let Cecily do her presentation first. So let's do roll call and get that out of the way.
All right, I'll do the roll call,
Please.
Barbara. So we have Mary Ellen Gibbs, who is absent. Barbara Kale,
Here,
present on Zoom. Georgia Santiago,
Present.
all right. And E. Doyle McCarthy. Present. All right, and we also have our chairperson, Julie Reyes, who's here and has joined us.
great.
All right, so we do have quorum, Barbara.
Excellent. So let's let Cecily do her shtick, and then we can do the approval of the minutes and reorganize priorities. And then if we have time, hopefully we can look again at the assembly bill and the state of resources. But let's start with Cecily, who so kindly offered to give us a presentation.
Hi, guys. Good afternoon. My name is Cecily Mendez, and I am the Outreach Specialist for Neighborhood Shops Elder Justice Program. And so today I'm just going to be giving you guys a brief presentation on our services, but also elder abuse and what it looks like, just so you guys know the resources that we have to offer. Before I start, does anybody have any questions?
Could you speak just a little slower?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Sure. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen because I have my presentation here. Everybody could see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right. So I'm just gonna turn off my camera if that's okay, because I just want you guys to focus on the presentation. But here we are. So today we're gonna be talking about elder abuse. So just present this right here, and it's about neighborhood shop as well. So we're gonna be learning about neighborhood shop, their general programs and stuff like that. So neighborhood shop, some people might know us, some people might not. We're a nonprofit organization and we've been servicing the Bronx for over 40 years. Okay, our philosophy is based on self-help, so that's actually what shop stands for. It's self-help older persons project, right? So we believe in individuals helping themselves, having that self-determination and motivation, and wanting to reach out for services, right? So like it says here, we believe that older adults are capable of helping themselves, right? Because a lot of people get confused, not getting confused, but you start to think that just because people are older, they don't know how to defend themselves, and that's totally not true, right? So here we have the services that neighborhood shop includes. I'm specifically from the Violence Intervention Prevention Program, so that's the presentation that I'm going to be giving out today. But neighborhood shop is, we're a multi-service agency. So here's the programs list by list. Uh, so we have the Community Care Network program. They handle things like HRA, anything with the city. Think of anything with the city. They're kind of like a call center. So if you need help with the housing lotto or HRA, or maybe like getting one of those special Metro cards, right? CCMP would be the department that would be able to help you with that. Yeah. Then we have the Community Care Network program. That also ties in with New York Connects of the Bronx, right? And then we also have our other older adult centers like Casa Boricua. We're going to have a fashion show coming up soon. We have Guest, Leon, and Soundview. These are all over the Bronx because we do service all of the Bronx and then Community District 12 in Manhattan. We also have the case management program. So the case management program specifically works with coordinating home services for older adults and making it, functional for them, especially sometimes a lot of the older adults we tend to see do not have family members or anybody available, right? So the case management program works in accommodating that individual feeling comfortable in their home. Okay. They also have a friendly visiting program that ties hand in hand with that. And that's basically like for homebound adults that do not socialize much or get out as much. We do have a friendly visitor program where you are paired with an intern or somebody from college with similar interests, and they will go, and do a friendly visit. um Talk with the individual, share thoughts, whatever, but that person also receives training just to make sure that the individual is okay, report it back to us, god forbid something's off, right? We also have our caregivers program. A caregiver is not to be mistaken with a home health aide. Okay, that is not an agency. So we saw during COVID a lot of caregivers came forward. Those are basically family members that take care of an older adult, especially sometimes we know how we have some family members that might not get along with certain people, or sometimes you have an uncle and you're like, oh my God, they might fire another one, God forbid, right? So we have a caregivers program. Caregiver program helps to alleviate those that are family members taking care of a loved one. But we also have workshops and stuff because, as you know, sometimes taking care of a loved one is not easy, especially if you have to do things all day with that person, right? So the caregivers program has respite services, which just means they'll be able to make sure you guys have a day off, while also getting your stuff done. And last but not least, here we have our Lafayette Estates NORC program. So NORC stands for Naturally Occurring Retirement Community, and that's kind of like an older adult center, except it's for folks that are retiring. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? No? All right, no problem. So I left violence intervention prevention program for last because that's my program. And so that's why we specifically give the presentation on elder abuse and stuff like that. We also have other services available or other presentations and topics available if you guys are interested, just for future reference. We do have presentations on elder abuse. We do have presentations on intervention options and self-determination, risk factors of elder abuse, financial exploitations and scams, and teaching older adults what scams might look like, especially online, right? We have presentations on family court and housing court and how to retain a restraining order from both of those courts. And last but not least, APS versus VIP, which we're going to get into. Not a lot of people even know what APS is, right? So those are our different presentations. And then soon I'm going to get into the services, right? So here at the Violence Intervention Prevention Program, obviously it was created to alleviate, adult crime and elder abuse, but we do service adults over 60 years old, right? So we talk about crimes all the time, but elder crime, that's actually a different sub-subject within crimes, right? So we work to alleviate that. We have referrals from NYPD and stuff like that. Our next bullet point here, it consists of two programs: the elder abuse and the crimes victims assistance program. So that's a little bit outdated, right? We're just gonna focus on the elder abuse portion. But back in the day, we did have connections with them. Okay, so our other services include crisis intervention, referrals, case assistance, supportive counseling, presentations such as outreach and stuff like that, safety planning, security lock installation, advocacy, and assistance with order of protections and evictions. Okay, and then filing compensation, right? Filing compensation claims and then obtaining police reports. Because again, sometimes people with the assistance of order and protections and evictions, it's not that we have lawyers ready for you guys. It's not that we are a nonprofit, okay? But we do have social workers that are able to navigate the court system with the older adult. Sometimes older adults, they become victims of elderly crimes and stuff like that. And when they want to press charges or they have a restraining order ready at hand, they kind of get confused and intimidated by the whole court system. And so then they kind of get stumped, right? They don't have anywhere to go, anywhere to turn. They feel like maybe it was redundant, right? So it's not like our social workers are going to do it for you. They will not do it for you. However, they are able to accompany the older adult to alleviate any stresses or any confusion that might come up, just in case, because sometimes lawyers can be like doctors and they use vocabulary words that we do not understand. So that's where that assistance with order of protections and evictions come in. Also, for the security lock installations, I just wanted to point out, yes, we do change your locks and that is free. However, there has to be proof of an abuser at home, right? And later we're gonna get into like what those kinds of abuse look like, what that kind of abuse looks like. But 9 times out of 10 is somebody that's getting emotionally abused, their family member by their family member, and there's precautions to that too, right? Because sometimes somebody could get squatterized and stuff like that. We're gonna get into all those kinds of abuse. A safety plan. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but a safety plan is when an alleged abuser, and a victim are at home, and the victim has to come up with a safety plan on how to safely escape or get out of that situation. Our social workers are able to put that together for you guys if you need assistance with that. And everything else here is a little bit self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions before we move on?
I do. Can
No.
you tell us something about where you are and how you do outreach and who your clients are?
Okay, yeah. So right now I'm in my office, 975 Kelly Street. So we are based in the Bronx, right off Intervale. So that is that's on the 2 train, Intervale on the 2 train. You get off right there and we're on Kelly. And then the way we do outreach, so we attend fairs, we attend events, we go to colleges. I do presentations, whether it's online or sometimes we even do training for staff, because a lot of the times people do not know how to they don't know the signs of elder abuse, right? So sometimes we give presentations to staff members or agencies that ask for a workshop. And then, like I said, we also have other topics, right? So intervention options, risk factors, financial exploitations. That's a really popular one, especially with everything going on online. So we do a lot of things, but our outreach is mostly like that, offering different topics of workshops to presentations to different people, going to different communities, fairs, events, schools, things like that. But to answer your question, we are in the Bronx, if that matters. Does anybody else have any other questions? No? All right, no problem. So I'm gonna just keep going. So what are the goals of this presentation? Why am I babbling, right? So we want to increase awareness about elder abuse, but also let you guys know the resources on where to turn for help. A lot of the times, we do live in the city that never sleeps. People don't know the resources that are available to them, and I just think that's very upsetting, right? So Neighborhood Shop is definitely one of those resources. We also want to serve as a catalyst and collaborate with the community, right? So this is a collaboration with Community Board 8, and so I'm excited because I like these community board meetings. And we also want to enable elder abuse victims to connect with victim assistance services, right? So again, that ties back into the first bullet, where a lot of these older adults, they do not know where to turn to because they just don't have the resources available to them. But it is something that happens, all right? So now, APS versus VIP. This is where I usually ask people if they even know what APS is, right? Because a lot of people don't know what APS is. So APS is like ACS, but for adults. So I always tell people ACS is the people who you call for the little kids, right? God forbid they're being mistreated. That's ACS. But APS, not a lot of people know about it because people don't think that they could get help. So Adult Protective Services is mandated by the state of New York, right? However, there are no requirements. You only got to be 18 years or older, right? However, they do tend to they help everybody. I'm not saying they don't, but right now their main focus is the community that is mentally or physically impaired. Okay. So with that being said, due to these impairments, they're unable to make their own decisions, carry out their own activities, daily living. So when you think of somebody that's mentally or physically impaired, maybe somebody that's wheelchair bound, maybe a special needs adult, right? Maybe somebody that would have needed their guardians all their life, right? These are people that can't really make their own decisions. So APS, they tend to focus on this clientele. Also, with that being said, I want to point out patients with dementia and Alzheimer's, they get referred to APS, okay? Because those cases take a little bit longer to study, right? So that APS, it's not like they won't get to your case, they will. However, just know that right now they do prioritize the mentally or physically impaired community, right? And it's gotten to the point where they refer their resources to VIP. Okay, so now we're getting referrals from Adult Protective Services as well. So that's just something to keep in mind, okay? Because remember, APS covers the whole state. By the whole state, I'm not only talking about the 5 boroughs, right? So it takes them a minute. But right now, they tend to focus on mentally or physically impaired, okay? And then now the difference between APS and VIP is that one, we're funded by DIFTA, and we serve adults who are 60 years or older and are victims of elder abuse or sometimes an elder crime, right? However, our seniors, remember, it's called Self-Help Older Persons Project, right? They're able to make their own decisions. They're mentally competent enough to tell us the whole story and not switch up on us, right? Like sometimes you'll notice that somebody with dementia, they could tell you something, but then in a moment, a few calls later, they don't even remember telling you that, right? So these cases have to be studied, so they get referred elsewhere. Okay, so we tend to serve adults who are mentally competent and able to make their own decisions, but also want to talk about it and they're open to the resources. Okay, we also support ongoing counseling, whether you like it or not. With that being said, it doesn't mean that we're going to force you to get a restraining order or anything like that. However, our social workers will check up on you to make sure everything's okay before that case is closed, right? Because sometimes you could call somebody 3 out of 4 times, but maybe 3 out of 4 times are in the same room with the abuser. You never know what the situation is, so you got to give the person the chance to speak, right? And then last but not least here, we also practice the staircase model. So those are just 3 steps of, I like to say 3 phases of abuse, right? So you have the reluctant stage. The reluctant stage or the resistance stage is kind of when the older adult does not even know they are being abused. Okay. My perfect example, an example I like to give with this is sometimes, let's say you go to a friend's house and, you go and maybe she has a granddaughter or something that yells at her crazy. Okay. Now, to your friend, that might not seem like anything because she might be like, oh, well, she just talks like that. But from the outside in, you are not a part of that family. Therefore, it seems like verbal abuse, right? But does your friend see it as abuse? No, your friend is reluctant to that. She doesn't know that's abuse. She doesn't even know that's a verbal abuse because maybe that's the way that girl talks, right? Or maybe that is a norm. Okay, so a lot of the times, reluctance or resistance, it's not that the person is in denial. It's not always that the person is in denial, but sometimes there are cases where they are. Sometimes it just could mean that the person does not even recognize the abuse. Okay, so think of it like that. They're kind of oblivious to what the abuse is anyway. Okay. You could tell somebody they're getting verbally abused and they'll be like, well, what are you talking about? I don't think you're exaggerating. You know what I mean? And again, they try to downplay it, but that's abuse. Okay. Then the next stage is recognition. Recognition is now when the client knows and recognizes they want to be abused. However, this stage is a little bit tricky because it's like 50-50. Okay. When I say 50-50, it means sometimes they might want the services, but they are afraid of the consequences. Therefore, they do not. Or 2, they are afraid of the consequences and then they just do not want the services. So sometimes the reason why I say it's 50-50 is because, again, they do want the help, but they're afraid of the consequences. Who am I going to get in trouble? Blah, blah. And then they get stuck in that recognition stage because they know something is wrong, but they are too afraid to come out about it because they're just afraid of the consequences. They're afraid of the unknown. Okay. And then sometimes you have people that recognize it and they'll continue to talk to their social workers, but maybe they're just not able to come forward about it yet. Or sometimes they don't even know what they want to do. Okay, a lot of the times, not with all of these cases, doesn't mean that somebody is immediately going to jail. All right, sometimes the family needs mediation, or sometimes maybe the person or the alleged abuser needs mental health services. Right? It doesn't always mean that they are going to be arrested or detained or anything like that. So sometimes in the recognition stage, you have a lot of adults that get stuck in the I don't know what to do. And last but not least, we have the rebuilding stage. The rebuilding stage is finally when they come out of the recognition stage and they want the resources, right? They want APS, they want their home visits, they maybe want to meet with a social worker, they want the resources available to them. All right. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Because I think the APS and VIP is really important and not a lot of people tend to know what APS is all of the time. Does anybody have any questions? No? All right, no problem. So here we just have a map just saying that 1 in every 23 older Americans is a victim of elder abuse. However, it is unreported, right? So with that being said, in 2016, there was like 4,800 cases. Here you have the exact numbers, 4,862. And then in 2021, it went up to 3.4%, now putting us at 5,000 cases. So from the spike from 2016 to 2021, you could just imagine how much it is in 2025, right? That number might have doubled. And again, this is just in New York State alone. Okay, so it is unreported. And now here, so what is elder abuse exactly? So it's an ongoing intentional or unintentional act causing harm to an older adult at the hands of somebody the person has a trusting relationship with, right? So I just wanted to get into this because sometimes with children, we do see that it's somebody that has access to the child, right? maybe like a teacher, a cousin, whatever. The same thing happens to older adults, and you'll be surprised. Sometimes it's not always somebody that has access to the child, but somebody that has access to the person's inner circle, the inner circle. So with children, it's more about access. Here, it's more about your inner circle and who surrounds you, because you have to be careful with who is surrounding the person. So in cases where the person is getting abused, sometimes, with that being said, what I want to reiterate here is that in order for it to be abused, for VIP to take the case, it has to be somebody the person knows. So let's say you know an older adult that's getting abused, but they're talking about their neighbor upstairs that keeps banging, and maybe they had a police report. That's already a dispute. That's seen as something else, okay? It has to be somebody that you have a relationship with, maybe somebody that goes over to your house, right? Somebody that the person really knows, in order for us to take it on as a case in regards to elder abuse. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that?
No,
Yeah? No?
no.
Okay, no problem. So here we're going to talk about the different types of abuse. So there's physical. I always say that's the one you could see, right? There's emotional, psychological. That's the one you can't see. Then there's financial, sexual, and neglect. Okay. So I'm going to break it down. Physical, you could see. Emotional and psychological is a little bit harder to prove, right? And that's where you have a lot of these older adults saying that maybe they're being gaslit or told that they're being exaggerated. It's not that. They know something is off. However, they will be called all kinds of names under the sun in order to be convinced otherwise, right? Then we have financial abuse. I wanted to talk about financial abuse because, like I said earlier before, we do offer a presentation on financial exploitations and scams, right? Because a lot of older adults tend to get scammed, and sometimes their family is putting them up to this. Okay, so financial abuse is not only about 20 to 30 bucks in your pocket. It's not about that. Financial abuse is more about somebody forging your signature and getting away with your properties. Financial abuse could also be um, using your benefits and entitlements, right? Like sometimes on Access a Ride, you'll see someone that does not need to access that ride, right? So you'll have people that are using somebody else's Medicaid or somebody else's benefit to get on that bus, right? Or sometimes another form of financial abuse could be a client complaining about maybe their family members stole their food stamps, right? Or maybe that HRA Metro card that comes in the mail, that half fare Metro card, they are entitled to that. Sometimes family members will steal this, okay? So it's not only about finances, literally. When you think of finances, I want you to think of fraud. I want you to think of Medicaid fraud. I want you to think of somebody forging your assets or properties into their name. That's the kind of financial abuse we're talking about. And a lot of the times, remember, since it is somebody that the elder abuse has a trusting relationship with, sometimes these are properties and other things. Okay, it's not only about literally the money, although sometimes it can be. But when I'm talking about financial abuse, I'm talking more about like identity theft, fraud, things like that. So that's important. We also have sexual abuse. A lot of people don't like to talk about it, but we do hear of it happening, and sometimes in nursing homes and stuff like that too. Um, that is a thing. And then last but not least, we have neglect. And neglect, I also wanted to touch base on, because neglect, there are little things that we tend to overlook, right? For instance, a perfect example of something that might be overlooked is, let's say you know an older adult who has a home health aide, right? And suddenly that home health aide, she doesn't have her walker, but she's leaning on the home health aide, maybe seems very reserved, off, right? That could be a sign of neglect, because that walker is a medical aid. Those glasses, that's a medical aid. The hearing aid, that's a medical aid. So sometimes neglect could simply be overlooked because the person doesn't have their aids, and that could be a form of abuse from the alleged abuser, because they could be doing that on purpose, right? Neglect could also literally mean a home health aide, or you know um, one of those workers that go into your home just deciding that they're not going to change their diapers. They're just not going to do that. And sometimes with a lot of these home care agencies, maybe sometimes they don't do the thorough background check. So whenever I get to this part of the presentation, I always tell people, if you know of a home health aide or somebody that is doing something off, please remember, don't only report it to the agency, because the agency could just take the worker off the route and maybe assign that worker to a different older adult, and then that'll be, worse because now they're abusing somebody else. I would always say call HR, call that office in Wyoming, call that office in Georgia, right? Because these people are going to look at the case objectively and not necessarily because it's their coworker in an office, okay? So those are the things I wanted to point out. Remember, when it comes to abuse, yes, you have the different types, but with financial, it's not always money. It can sometimes be about your insurance and identity. And then with neglect, you don't, it could be home health aides, yes, but always remember to take it a step further, report HR, report those offices, all right? Does anybody have any questions before we continue?
No,
No problem.
No.
So here again, why is elder abuse unreported? A lot of people are scared, and by scared I mean a lot of people are threatened, right? You'll have some older adults be told, "Oh my God, if you call the cops on me today, you're not waking up tomorrow," right? And this could be by their nephew, their niece, whoever. But now they're stepping on eggshells in their own home. That's not fair. That's not right. Culture by culture, you have that just means your own family. Your own family will turn against you, tell you that you're crazy or that you're over exaggerating, right? The next one here is shame. A lot of people that are getting abused, especially older adults, they're a little bit embarrassed about it because they start thinking about ageism. I always say ageism is a form of like self-discrimination where like you start saying, I'm a little bit too old for this, I should know better, right? And so they get stuck there. And again, that's the second stage that we were talking about, the reluctance at recognition stage, where they recognize something's off, but they don't know what to do about it, right? They get scared. Then there's the reluctant stage. Again, people that are in denial or don't even know. Then you have guilt. A lot of older adults, a lot of them, they tend to sometimes your grandsons could be an abuser, right? Your children. A lot of us feel guilty because we don't want to put something on somebody else's record. We don't want to ruin somebody else's record, or oh my God forbid that person has to go to jail. Now their record is tainted. People always think about somebody's background, right? And they get stuck in that, and then they will never report the abuser. Here we have ambivalence, and then last but not least, little or no trust in law enforcement. I always tell people, because before this I used to work for the police department for 3 years. Your police report is a summary of what the officer saw that day, and it's a summary of what you called in that day and what they saw that day, right? Your police report is kind of like a golden ticket for you to go into the court systems and decide whether you want to, whether you want to press charges or not. They will not do it for you. So a lot of the times you hear, or you will hear, older adults saying, I called the cops and they didn't do anything. But if you didn't go pick up your police report, I don't know if they'll mail it to you. That's number one. And number two, nobody is going to hold your hand and go to court with you or for you, right? Those are things you have to do yourself. So when that police report is given to the older adult, please inform them that if they want a restraining order, if they want to press charges, their next step would be to go to court. And if they need assistance with that, again, neighborhood shop, and I'm pretty sure other agencies, they probably have people that know how to navigate the court systems that are able to help that older adult, because that's where they get stumped. Okay. They will want to press charges. They're serious about getting somebody out of their house, but the moment they get there, they don't know what to do. Or the moment they get their police report, they think that's it and they don't know what to do. Okay. Also, it's important to know that 90% of alleged abusers are family members, which makes it even more difficult. So again, please know that they will not report somebody, especially a lot of older adults tend to get lonely or something. So like, let's say they have a home health aide or something like that, they think it's a friend. It's not. It's very complicated. It's sad, but they will not report the person. So please be mindful of that. And what I want you guys to at least take from this slide is, if you know somebody that has a police report or something, please prompt them and tell them that their next step would be to go to court. Okay. Now, the risk factors, or how it affects the client, right? You have mental status, but mental status is not only anxiety and depression. I also say people's health, it gets affected too, right? Because, if you feel stress could lead to heart attacks and other things, Bell's palsy, things like that. So it's not only mental, but also your physical and mental health. Isolation. A lot of people become self-reserved. They don't want to participate anymore. They don't want to engage. They will not come out of their house. Dependence. They feel like they depend on the abuser. Therefore, they can never tell, because this is a person that they feel like they need. Okay, a lot of the times I go places and we have a lot of older adults that they have a home care aide, they let somebody sign their papers for them or something like that. I always tell people never give anybody that much power over your autonomy, especially if it's something that you could do yourself. Frailty, here's the next one. We usually think that, or elders usually think that they are too frail to do anything, and God forbid something goes wrong, they are afraid of getting beaten or ending up in a more worse situation. And then here we have ageism, which again is that I like to say it's like a self-discrimination where the person just starts telling themselves that they're a little bit too old for that, they don't know what to do, they get stuck in that. And then last but not least, vulnerability. We become vulnerable, especially if we are the ones, if we have to depend, it would depend on the person that is abusing us. Okay, if we are depending and we feel frail and then we become isolated, they all kind of tie into each other. A perfect example I like to think about this is, think about an elder adult, an older adult that maybe goes to centers, things like that. All of a sudden, they don't participate. All of a sudden, you don't see them anymore, but you see their home aide or you see their sister, you see a family member laughing, chatting it up. It's weird, right? Especially if that other person is nowhere to be seen, but maybe they're a caregiver. Maybe you know that that person takes care of somebody. It's something that that person is doing that might be keeping that person in an isolated state, or maybe you haven't seen them in a while, or maybe this older adult is surrounded by somebody and suddenly they don't feel well or they're anxious, but that person's okay. You have to start asking yourself how or what is that person doing that has this person in this state, because these are little signs of elder abuse that get overlooked. It's like I was telling you guys earlier with the hearing aid and stuff like that. Like if somebody's missing their glasses, their walker, it might not seem like a big thing at first, but start noticing these little patterns because these are discrete ways that abusers get away with it. Okay, so now who could be an abuser? Here you have your grandchildren, right? Your people get into this, I don't know, mindset where it's like you start thinking, oh my God, they're not my kid, I can't discipline them, right? So you have your grandchildren, your caregivers, your own children, strangers. Whenever I get to strangers, I always tell people to remember that case that happened not that long ago on the train where that lady was burned alive. I'm not saying that she was an older adult. However, when I do get to that part of the presentation, I always tell my older adults, don't think that you guys are victims when you go outside. However, do tell yourself that I am a little bit more vulnerable than the rest of this population. So if I see people getting on a bus and it's rowdy, I'm not going to get on that bus. If I see a rowdy train, I'm not going to get on that train, right? Just kind of avoid, just be safe. It's better yet to be safe than sorry. Then here I have home health aides, right? Home health aides kind of ties in with caregivers, but caregivers are a little bit tricky because remember, not all caregivers are home health aides. Okay, some of them are family members. Then you have religious leaders. Religious leaders take advantage of people's faith. Okay, especially if they're in a vulnerable state where they feel like they need to go to church to vent. Right, church is a safe space. And last but not least, neighbors. I always tell people. Your neighbors, they know how you live, where you live, they know your gossip, they know everything. But remember, your neighbor is not necessarily a family member per se, but they are in your inner circle. So this is that inner circle that I talked about in the beginning of the presentation. It's always somebody that has a trusting relationship with the older adult. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we continue? No? All right, no problem. Okay, so here, alleged abuser risk factors, why they do what they do, right? Frustration. A lot of people say that they're frustrated or grumpy. If you meet somebody like Oscar the Grouch, get away from them, right? Not a positive person to be around. Substance abusers, controlled substances or not controlled substances. People will tend to say that they blacked out, they don't remember. But again, being on a controlled substance or not is no reason to be abused. Now, there's alcohol abusers, especially in some families. You will hear some jokes about some people that don't know how to hold it down or they don't know how to drink. They get drunk. It's silly. It's a good time. But again, having a good time does not equate to abusing another person. So let's just get that out the way. Financially dependent on the client. I'm going to save that for last because that's one of my favorite bullets. And power and control, right? So now going back to my favorite bullet, financially dependent on the client. What does this mean? Financially dependent on the client doesn't mean that they literally depend on them for money. No. I always tell people the biggest lie in the world is when somebody comes to your house, a family member, they're like, hey, can I stay in your house for 2-3 weeks because I lost my employment, I lost my job, right? And then they're like, oh, I'm gonna pay rent. That's never gonna happen. That's never gonna happen because they don't have a job, right? So what happens in this situation is a lot of the times a family member will tell you, hey, I could help with your Con Edison bill, or let me help with your Optimum bill, right? And it sounds like a good deal because you're getting a bill out the way and you're also doing somebody a favor, right? Now, what a lot of people get stuck on is the moment you give that person, right? The moment you give that person, right, over your bills, or let's say they're doing you that little favor, and now something is coming to a bill or a amenity or whatever is coming to your address in their name, you have just given that person squatter rights. Okay. And squatters rights used to be 30 days. They recently updated it to 45. I believe it was in March-ish. I believe in March, April. It was 30 days and now it's 45 days. Okay. So now it's harder to get these squatters out of your home. Okay. So please be mindful of that. Do not let anybody stay in your home. If you guys know of any of the adults who are going through this, please tell them to get a notarized letter. Okay. That notarized letter should state what day that person started staying there and what day you want them out, because that will help in court a little bit. So I'm looking at my calendar right now. If today is the 8th, a perfect example, if today is the 8th and I asked to stay at somebody's house, right? I would, as an older adult, I would want an notarized letter until the 29th, Thursday, the 29th of May, saying that I'm getting out of that house. Why? Because that will hold weight in court, okay? Especially with the squatter rights. Does anybody have any questions in regards to this? No? Okay, please remember, if you know anybody who is going through that, please tell them, do not let anybody pay any of your bills. Do not let anything arrive in that person's name. Get a notarized letter from start date to end date, because that will help them in court, okay? Because this is the situation that I was talking about earlier, when we have to kind of change the locks on certain abusers, okay? It is free. Like I said, it is free. However, there has to be proof of abuse in the house. And these people become abusive. And then you have the older adult, they stay in their room. They kind of give access to the person the person has access to their whole apartment. And then the older adult usually ends up in a room or scared. And now they don't have control over their home. And then that leads to the next bullet, the power and control. They already have power and control over the client once they live in their home. All right. This we could skip. We could skip this. And then, yeah, these are just the resources. If you guys have any questions, these are this is our main number, the 718-542-0006, and then info@neighborhood shop. And then I'm gonna be putting my name in the chat as well, just in case, my email. Does anybody have any questions? Because if not, that wraps up my presentation. All right, no problem. Thank you.
Oh, Barbara, you're muted.
Could you please send a copy of the PowerPoint to the CB8 office?
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cecily. All right, Barbara, you want to move on to the
Okay.
next item on the agenda?
Yes.
You want to
Let's
do the approval of the committee
let's do
minutes?
a quick approval of the minutes, and I think let's try to look at the priorities.
Yep,
The resolution and the resource book can wait.
okay.
So let's look at the minutes. Does anybody have any corrections, changes that they would like to make?
Barbara,
Yes.
on the second page, under the number 2 Jessa Van Cortlandt Older Adult Center,
Mhm.
I think there's a word missing from the sentence that starts, the committee's interpretation was that Jess's request was to cover costs of transportation, so we included it under expenses. Is that
Yes.
okay, Barbara, that change? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's in the April minutes?
Yeah. But let's do
right.
the earlier minutes make sure they're
Okay.
okay, because we're gonna be revising the priorities anyway. But I will add the 2.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's do the
The
earlier,
February minutes.
the February. Any questions about the February minutes? Okay,
I'm just asking you, does it start the same page, approval of meeting minutes of February 13th?
The
I,
minutes were sent,
They're separate,
yeah, they're separate, the minutes are
Okay,
separate,
fine,
yeah. Mhm.
fine, thank you.
that's okay. Let's go with approval for the February. Are there any objections, abstentions? Okay, approved. Are we good with that?
Right.
Let's go with April. Any objections or abstentions? Approved.
There's just that one amendment to add that word
But
to,
they add the word "to."
yeah.
Got that.
All right.
Okay. Let's look at the priorities. Now, I'm not sure how we
Right.
go ahead with it.
I can help you, guide you along a little, Barbara, if you'd like.
Please, I would very much like that.
So last time you had I think three items that you put in your order.
Right,
Yes.
Since then, right, you've got an additional request from the Riverdale Y.
right.
Right.
So and Riverdale Senior Services. So you were supposed to review these, see which ones, if any or all, you want to put on the budget request list. And then you do have to prioritize them all. And that's it.
Okay,
So right now you're discussing which items, or all items you want to add to your requests from the Y that you received and Riverdale Senior
Got it.
Service.
okay,
So the
Let's-
Y has new vehicles, transportation
Right.
money for vehicle repair and maintenance. And, the most important need is money for
Right.
food.
right.
So
So
those are,
which or all of these do we want to include in the priorities? Floor is
and I
open.
do wanna ask, were these given to the council member as well, these requests?
I don't know.
Yeah, so. So, when we give the money to the council member, it's very, like request, it's very general. It's
Okay,
not done like this. I can tell you that Live on New York is advocating, this year's campaign is about food.
okay,
But it's not, our council requests are more, more written. They're more written in the way that RSS's requests are written. It's a very general thing, and then we budget. When we get an award, we put it towards specific. So
Right.
our council request just says to support senior services. It doesn't, it's not.
right, cause I
Well,
think
the
you
adult center and our law.
you usually ask for, if there's a specific need for transportation, it's be it a van, be it whatever it is specifically that you need. Usually that request is put in with his office and we support it on our end, and that's it's the best way to do it. So that's why I asked,
Right.
was anything sent to the
So,
city council?
I think it was said as general support for the older adult center. For
Okay.
programming and for the North Lunch Program.
Oh, okay, for the food, what was that
Well,
called?
the North Lunch Program.
How do you spell that?
NORC.
NORC lunch program.
So,
Okay.
right,
So that would be good to put that wording in North Lunch Program.
Right,
Right. I've- I've
So
got, that.
money to support the North Lunch
To
Program.
support activity, but it's very general, money to support food and activities at our NOC, money to support food and activities at our senior center. That's how it's,
That's
That's what
exactly
they-
how we should put it here.
right,
Yeah.
right, food and enrichment and
Okay.
food and transportation and
Mhm.
enrichment activities at our older adult center.
So that's how you can put it in there. Okay.
That's a capital
Okay.
request, or?
I think the food
vehicles-
is not as expense, right?
Right, that's expense, vehicles are capital.
So you have to split it.
All right, so
between-
that's not transportation cost, that's actually vehicles. And the
Right.
Department for the Aging, I know that, the Department for the Aging has not awarded
Since
money for
2015.
vehicles since 2015.
right, and
But
that's,
then the money for repair and maintenance is an expense.
Right, that's separate.
Okay, so the money for
Right,
transportation, repair, maintenance,
Mhm.
and food security for the North Lunch Program
for
are
the,
expenses.
for the NOC and then for the older adult center.
Oh,
So-
North.
They're
Right.
separate?
So if I was gonna do this the way, like, I just sent you bullet points, but if I was gonna do it the way Margie did it in bold, I would write older adult center, and then I would put, food food
Okay.
vehicles and transportation, and then I would put the second one, because what she did was she listed up 3 programs, and I would say naturally occurring retirement community, and then I would say, it's in need of, off-site lunch programs and enhanced activities.
Well, knowing what the items are, you can pick your priorities today. We can define the language better with you
Sure.
after that.
Yeah.
But for today's purposes, what you want, so you can still vote on what you wanna put on your list and in what order.
okay. Let's go over the Riverdale Senior Services, and then we can get a sense, Farah, how many requests do we submit? How many of these? Do we need to say, do we need to limit it, or can we just put all of these and prioritize them?
Say, you can, you decide what's important to you. I think at this point, a lot of our committees, no one went crazy with requests, so you have your own, I would say if you wanna include everything, you can. And then,
Okay.
it's up to the full board in what order to put all these requests. But,
Got
and if there's anything you feel won't, doesn't align with what we wanna request, or, you have other things you feel are more important, then that's totally your prerogative, so you choose.
Okay, Riverdale Senior Services has asked for money for their adult day program for memory loss. And that's
Right.
expenses. They've asked also for older adults mental health program, geriatric mental health initiative. And again, of course, that's expenses. And it sounds as if that largely is spent on nursing and social work services. That's my take on it. And then access to critical services for older adults, transportation. And that,
And then I get
yeah.
different. Yeah.
that's the last
capital?
one.
That would be, access to critical services transportation. Let's see, support transportation. I think that's actually expense. It doesn't say
I was
buying of a
gonna say.
vehicle.
That's
Yeah.
expenses.
Yeah,
So all 3 are expense from RSS?
it looks like it, yeah.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so we and River Spring and us, we move vehicle.
So that's capital.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
Right.
could,
So-
that makes it easy if you have only 2 capital items, you could put, RSS and River Spring under capital. And just put it in whatever order you want.
No, River Spring and Riverdale Y.
I'm sorry, Riverdale Y and River Spring under capital.
Right. Okay. And let's see, how do we want to prioritize the expenses. I think it's
Well,
very,
Capital, we have 1 River Spring, 2 are Riverdale Y.
right.
So,
I
should
think
we say
very-
that's it, then we're good.
I think it's very interesting, and I don't know how we want to reflect this, that all of these agencies have requested money to cover transportation expenses without, I think,
Yep.
exception.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps we might want to say that that's the priority for these 3 entities or 4.
Yeah, if you have one category that we wanna give to 3 different organizations, you could maybe do
Exactly.
that as one request and list, transportation expense, costs to cover, these organizations or
Right.
something. You
Absolutely.
could do that. Okay, so
What's-
let me just see
what's
here what
the-
we have. So that's number 2 on the Riverdale Y, right? Transportation money for vehicle repair. And then for Riverdale Senior Services, where's the transportation? Let's see here,
That's the last
the
one.
last one.
Last,
So we're gonna include this one. And where is it? This one. Is there a third one?
Yeah, River Spring Living.
Jazz,
Uh,
It's already on this.
No, that's a capital expense.
Ja-
We're talking
no.
about,
River Spring Living was the elder justice and scam prevention.
right, that's,
JASA,
we're going 2 requests for expense money to cover transportation.
The vehicles for
Well-
Riverdale Y is capital.
No, I'm looking at number 2, transportation money for vehicle repair and maintenance. As
As-
part of the Riverdale Y request.
Oh, okay, so. it's
And
not-
then if
so
you
that's-
look at
so that's expense.
access, right, to transportation, that's an expense,
Right,
right?
yeah.
To support transportation, there's 2 people requesting money to support transportation.
I
So
think
that
there
will
were
be-
3. I'm sorry, I
What's
think
the
there were
third?
3.
Oh,
The
is Jocelyn
Riverdale Y.
already in here?
And JASA,
Yeah, so that was, okay, so we're gonna add to that number 2, we're gonna add the
Yes.
Riverdale Y, right? And
Yes.
RSS,
yes.
so that'll all be as number 2 on the expense priority list.
Okay.
Okay, question.
We'll include the language, we'll clean it up, so it's inclusive for all
Yeah, I can-
3.
I can work on that language if you like. And I would
Yep.
Suggest, depending on how
Mhm.
you all feel, making the transportation 1, since all 3 of them have declared
Mhm.
this an issue.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what it's gonna be one priority request, and we're gonna list the actual organizations and give a
Right.
little language that, money
Yes.
to cover transportation, we'll use language from that all 3 use. so
I
that-
RSS, that's the
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
But
we'll-
I'm
we'll
not
get
being clear.
The RSS
Use
language.
the RSS language.
Hang on.
Language.
Hang on,
We can
hang
work
on,
that
though.
out.
I'm not being clear. I would make an order of the expenses. I'd make transportation number 1 and the
Yes.
elder
Oh,
justice number 2.
Got it.
Got
So
it.
we will switch it, yes, so
Are
that'll
you
be
good with
2.
all that? Okay,
That's, your committee has to.
Georgia and Doyle.
are you good, committee? Is that okay with you guys?
yes,
George, are you with
Georgia.
us?
I like that, right.
Okay,
Yes, I hear what's going on. I
Great.
hear you clearly.
Great.
Okay, so the number 1 item on the expense requests
Right.
are gonna be the transportation, the expense money for transportation
Right.
for the 3
Yes.
organizations that submitted.
Correct.
And then number 2 for expense will be the River Spring Living, well, we should talk about the other stuff. The Elder Justice Scam Prevention, toolkit to fund that. Then there's a
Yes.
couple more expense requests, I believe,
Right,
right?
it's
So there's
the,
2 more.
right, the older adult mental health and social adult daycare.
Yes,
How do we want to prioritize those in terms of 1, 2, and 3?
correct. So, knowing that you think the expense for transportation is number one,
Right.
so now you gotta decide, you have the elder justice scam prevention toolkits, that's one item. You have a social adult daycare for
Right.
Riverdale Senior Services. It's an adult day program for memory loss. And then the other item is the, older adult mental health program for geriatric mental health initiatives.
Right.
Let's see. Yeah, so you guys have to make that choice.
So how do I hear any,
Well, can't you make,
Um,
the way we used to do this years ago on this committee was it was more general, it wasn't specific to the agency. Is that new, or?
What do you mean specific to the
Well, we
agency?
would come up with a list like, okay, these are the needs for the older adults, transportation, elder abuse prevention,
No,
memory
it
loss.
should be
it's
to
an-
specific programs because
Uh-huh.
if it's too general,
Right,
it goes to a city agency and it's up to them to distribute.
right.
We want this to go to actual
Specific organizations.
programs,
Specific
right,
organizations.
specific
Okay, because
organizations.
they never did that. They.
I mean,
years
like with
back.
libraries, we could say we want
Yeah.
programming 6 days a week,
Right.
that'll go to all libraries.
Right, so with
But-
older adult centers,
But
You
we only
you want
have a
food.
few, we
Right.
can list them all. We
Right.
could say to
Okay.
the older done centers in our district
right,
Oh.
and list them all.
right,
okay,
But, again, if it's going
Got
to an elected official,
right,
we wanna have the specific ones. If
Got
it's just, if it's done through the city agency, like
Right.
Department for the Aging,
right,
that's different, then yes, it
Got
would
it.
be more general.
got it.
I think in this case, it's okay to
Right.
do specific.
okay.
And I think I see Methodist Home is here, we never received anything from them, but hopefully next year.
We
I'll
have,
some-
we have 4.
How are we gonna rank this? Yeah,
What's that?
we gotta rank.
We
these.
have,
So you just
4
gotta rank
expenses.
rank your 4 expenses. and
Right
then-
now
Yes.
you have number 1 for the transportation.
right,
Right,
right. And then we have 4 others. The elder
3 others.
justice,
3 others.
well, don't forget an NORC lunch.
The North Lunch Program.
Yeah, the NORC program.
That's not on there.
Oh, thank you, yes, correct, sorry, here we go.
So,
You're right.
for going forward, Artie, is there a way to, I don't see a way to put things in a chat. I don't see, is
We
there a
don't have
way
that.
for you to allow that?
We don't enable that on our.
Okay,
No.
meetings.
got it. Okay,
I can
so
Sarah.
how do you want to rank them? We have,
We can share the screen and show the requests here.
great, okay,
So right now, under expenses, number 2 is actually number 1,
yes, that's great.
right,
and then, yeah, vice versa. And then, we are including not just JASA, but the RSS and the
Right.
Riverdale Y requests for transportation funding.
So how do we want to rank the elder justice, adult memory, mental health program, and NORC lunch, NORC lunch?
Well, maybe, Audrey, do you wanna put all the expense requests in there?
Yeah, one
If
So
second.
everyone
Good,
can
that
see
would be
it.
great.
Barbara, if this is coming from your committee, the way that you rank them, you have to get your committee members to vote on it. And since Georgia can't see,
Right.
maybe you guys can read the order and see if it's approved or not.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Right now, we're just, Georgia, just so you know, we're just typing in everything so we can read it clearly to you. And everyone else can see
Okay.
it.
Okay, thank you.
This is Riverdale.
Yeah, So the North
Thank you,
Lunch
Artie.
Program, an older adult center also. And older adult center. Yes. Right?
Right.
Okay.
No, actually, what I'm
Mhm.
reading is just they want money for food for the NORC. They haven't had.
Yeah, and they mentioned their older adult center needs food.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'll take as much money as for food as you can give me.
All right.
Yeah,
And then you have-
absolutely.
Right.
Okay, and then the mental health program,
Right.
and the memory program at Riverdale
Mhm.
Senior Services.
So we have transportation for RSS Riverdale Y and JASA. The
Yes,
Elder Justice Program for River Spring Living, the North Lunch Program and older adult center at the Riverdale Y. We have the
Social adult daycare.
daycare,
right.
RSS.
And
we
the
have
older
the-
adults mental health RSF.
RSS.
Now
So
it's
we
just a
have-
matter of how you guys want to rank them.
RSS, right.
So we have 5 expenses. How would we like to rank them?
Well, I think you all agreed that the transportation
Correct.
need was number one.
Right.
Oh,
So now
absolutely.
you just have, right? So now you just
Yeah.
can talk about the next 4, how to rank those. So the 4 items, just so you know, Georgia, the requests
Yes.
are an elder justice and scam prevention. They want funding to make toolkits to help seniors at the River Spring Living on, for scam prevention. The other request is from Riverdale Y. They need support for food for their lunch programs and their older adult center, so they need money for that. The next item is, the other 2 are from Riverdale Senior Services for their social adult daycare. It's a larger amount of money that, it's a program for memory loss. And, they want to build on the program, request a renewal and increase as we build our capacity. So this is really money to increase and enable the program even more. The next one is older adult mental health program, geriatric mental health initiative. This is also to enhance the program. It's basically, they need $200,000 from the Department of Health. And, they do screenings for depression and alcohol and substance abuse. They do supportive counseling. So it's just a question of where you feel the importance to fund these programs should go. I mean, they're all important, but we do have to make a decision of an order.
Exactly.
So you have the toolkits, you have food, you have a social adult daycare center, and a geriatric mental health initiative.
I think I'm in favor of the food being switched with the, security program.
What's the
Okay.
second?
With the
What's
scam
it
prevention,
called? Yeah,
Oh,
scam
so
prevention.
So it'll become number 2, the food security
Right.
support?
Yes,
Food is 2, right. That would be my inclination.
Okay.
Exactly, right. Food 2, after transportation, and then scam prevention number 3.
And then you have.
And the rest I'd leave.
Okay, so as suggested, what's listed is the transportation need number 1. The money to support food programs are number 2.
yes,
Number 3 is the toolkits for scam prevention.
yes.
Number 4 is a social adult daycare program at Riverdale Senior Services. And number 5 is a geriatric mental health initiative
Right.
for Riverdale Senior Services.
Sounds good to me. What's the will of the committee? What do you guys think?
I would approve of that, the way you just said.
I'm happy.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Myself, this is Georgia speaking.
Great.
Georgia, how,
Okay, good. Yeah,
Georgia, what
I
do
would
you,
agree with the way she just listed it. I would agree
You
to
would
leave it
agree
like
or you
that.
wouldn't?
You would.
She
I
would.
agree.
Okay, great.
Great.
okay, so I'm clear. I can listen to I've got notes, I can listen to the video and write it up. I'm good for the minutes. And I'm going to suggest that it's almost 5:15, that we hold the legislation, and
Well,
the, um, the services,
right.
On the capital, we did already.
yes,
Okay.
What's the capital?
The capital, the first item is the wheelchair minibuses,
Yeah.
and then the Riverdale Line
Right.
transportation request
New vehicles.
for new vehicles.
So it's
right.
the same buses. It's the
Right.
same buses.
The committee
And
voted
buses.
on that?
Same buses, yeah.
Barbara, we'll send you this, list as you see it on the screen.
Perfect.
Did the committee vote on the capital?
They did before this. They added exactly as you see it on the screen, Julie, if you're looking.
Yeah, but they voted on it?
Yes, everyone was in agreement. George, are you in agreement with the?
Yes, I was.
It's one
Also,
inch.
I
Okay,
heard you.
good, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they asked for two, I would say for us, one, I have
One.
one coming from the state, so.
Okay.
Yes, okay. And I'm going to suggest, given the time, that we hold the resource manual and a resolution on the Senate and Assembly bills at the state level till our next meeting. Does that pose any issues, Farah?
No, agree, agree.
Okay,
Georgia, are you okay with that?
I'm fine. Yes.
everybody else good?
Yeah.
Yep.
We ready to adjourn?
Right,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I will send you next month's meeting date, and that'll be your last meeting before summer recess.
Right. And I will talk with the office to make sure that we get everything done that needs to be done before we end for the summer.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
do we have a presentation scheduled for next time?
So far, no.
No.
Okay, I think it's probably best we don't, but we can see.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
a very, very good presentation, it just was a little long.
Yeah, when I schedule presentations, let's put it this way, if I'm in that position to do so, I'll make it very clear how long. For half an hour. This is what we can.
Oh, yeah, you
If-
can do that. That is good.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, you got to do that.
And
Okay,
All right.
all right, so everyone
Uh,
voted to end the meeting?
No.
yes,
No,
I
no.
move we adjourn. All in favor?
Second it.
Okay. A
Thank you,
pleasure.
guys.